Juggling motherhood and modern day life can be stressful and relentless, but it doesn't need to be this way. The Joy of Being podcast is the answer to maternal mental health, bringing sustainable relief and calm to hardworking mums everywhere so that you, your family, and work can thrive. My name's Marina Pearson, and I'm your host, transformational coach, and mum who loves to interview business owners, transformational professionals, and creatives to have insightful conversations about what it takes to really live a life that is thriving, fulfilling, and full of joy. So in the next coming weeks, I have decided to launch a coronavirus series in which I'll be bringing on amazing guests to talk about these uncertain times and how even in uncertainty, there can be an amazing opportunity for us to thrive. Now, that may sound weird, especially if you're seeing markets tumble, especially if you've got people around you that are suffering because of the virus, and maybe even if because you are scared of your business coming to a halt. Whatever it is, the fears that you have and the panic that you may be feeling, then this series is going to really help with that. I felt really compelled to bring this into my awareness, but also into the awareness of you, the listener. So with that in mind, I'm super excited to be launching this series and for us to create a different conversation to the one that's being had in the media. Not to say that this isn't important, not to say that we're not entering into difficult times, but to say that there is and there are other ways of viewing it other than the panic and the fear that's being brought to the table. So if you are feeling that and you are being affected by the coronavirus through your business, through your finances, through your health, then these are going to be incredible conversations to be tuning into. And if you know of anybody in that situation, then please do share the episodes with them. Enjoy. And on today's show, I've invited the beautiful Adey Jones back onto the show to talk about toxic relationships during the lockdown. As you may well remember, we talked about narcissistic relationships in the last podcast episode that we did. And we decided to talk about toxic relationships during this time because the lockdown has actually been amplifying relationship dynamics that may or may not well have been noticed before. We spoke about how to identify whether you're in a toxic relationship. We spoke about how you can deal with the situation on this particular lockdown. And we also talked about how to move out and off into another relationship that can actually be much better for you. So if you have been struggling with your relationships during this time and you've got an inkling or a notion that it's become quite toxic, then this is going to be a great episode for you. Enjoy. So welcome everybody to another coronavirus special. It's really funny. As time has gone by, my videos have got a little bit more loco, and so has the way I'm presenting this podcast. So it might have something to do with the fact that I'm on lockdown day 17, veering into 18, and God knows how long we're going to be here for. So welcome back, Del.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here. Equally so, a little stir crazy on this side of the ocean.
How long have you been in lockdown for now?
Gosh, you know what? I'm not entirely sure. I haven't been counting, but I think my personal lockdown started 2 weeks ago. This coming Friday. Right. So maybe I'm about to take day 12 then.
Right.
But I think our official one was maybe. Oh God, I don't know. I think it's actually even longer. Can't remember.
It's officially that she's been in lockdown already way too long. It's that sort of, I don't know what day it is or what hour it is, and I can't even. So we're going to be talking about relationships, especially as we're all locked in and down, and how to, navigate this. Because I guess what this is doing, it's just putting a massive magnifying glass, right, on things that were already happening that looking up close is magnifying even more, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And just, during this, even in the healthiest of relationships right now, there are stresses that we normally wouldn't have. People have been more reactive, more emotional, coming from a place of fear and confinement and pressure. And And so when you, and my area of expertise is dealing with codependency and narcissistic abuse and that realm. And if you're in one of those relationships or any relationship that has an unhealthy pattern in it already, that's just going to just get amplified incredibly. And it's not like you can physically distance yourself from somebody or go for a walk or get away from them. You're really in a confined space. And I talked to somebody this morning who lives in the UK, and he said that I think murder is up amongst couples.
Really?
There have been, yes, in the last, I can't remember if he said it was the last week or so, there have been 10 murders in the UK of spouses murdering the other spouse. And he shared, because he lives in Wales actually, and I'm from Wales, so he was saying that in Wales, just very close to him, some 70-year-old man, and his wife, they were both in their 70s, he just strangled her. And because clearly he was out of his mind in that moment. I'm laughing because you're laughing. Now you're laughing silently, but that's how extreme.
Okay, me.
Oh my God! How is anybody going to take us seriously?
We're gonna be killing each other by the end of this episode.
That's how. I mean, I'm thinking, my God, this couple managed to survive however long they've been married together, many years, they said. And due to this stress and the confinement, the husband just lost it. And it's so tragic. I mean, but it's understandable. I mean, I think I was just sharing about, I'll out myself here a bit. I've noticed I have the most incredible partner in the world who's the most loving, amazing man. And I have been like irritable with him and nitpicky and things I'm not particularly proud of, but I can see that as my stress level, as we're all human, we're going to go through the highs and the lows, and we were both sharing earlier that there are some more than the fear of my getting the virus. It's the economical impact that this shutdown has had on everybody around the world, and that fear of how am I going to pay the bills and things like that creates a lot of stress within relationships. So that's part of what's going on, very much so. Never mind getting on each other's nerves. It's the worry of how, what we're going to do in the future. Mm. So the more that we can sort of stay in the present moment and just put one foot in front of each other and give each other a break. I mean, give ourselves a break too if our emotions are a little heightened and we're a little more reactive than we would like to be, and equally so give that to our partners as well.
Yeah, and even children. I'm with Leo, and we're having our moments. And one of the things that I've decided to do is a timeout for me.
I was about to say for both of you.
Yeah, going on timeout. Give me 10 minutes. Like the other day, literally, I was like, I need to go outside, Leo. I'm going outside because if I don't, I'm going to lose it, and I don't want to. So I'm just going to go outside, take some deep breaths, come back up, and then we'll. Anyway, what I was amazed about was that I even had the space for me to see that and to kind of go, I need to just go outside for a couple of, just to calm down. So there is this capacity that we have for space inside, then allows us to kind of walk away from something that is really not worth going into, right?
Absolutely. And that's beautifully put. And it really is, because, the fact that, we were talking about space as in a house or whatever, that is, that's in the world of form. But as you say, in this formless world that we know we exist in, space is only within us. I mean, going to that quiet place within us is always there for us, regardless of what's going on in the outside world, regardless of, the confinement. It is finding that place inside. And again, just knowing that but also knowing that, sometimes in the heat of the moment, we might forget that for a minute, but not to beat ourselves up for it. And be, I love George's, being grateful for the highs and graceful with the lows. I mean, if you for a moment forget and become reactive, it's just the allowing that to sort of be okay and just be like, okay, no, I've recentered myself. I'm deeper in my grounding now. I know that this is not a healthy way to communicate. So
it's funny. I was doing a webinar the other night, and we were talking about this very thing, but with kids. And one of the things that came up for me was thought just does its thing, right? It just does its thing. It goes up and down. It does its thing. It has a life of its own, as far as I can tell. And just like dogs that sniff, they do their thing, right? They pee against lampposts and they run around in the mud and they sniff things and they lick things, and they're just doing their thing. You can't expect a dog not to do their thing.
Yeah.
And so I find myself, interestingly enough, for me, the dog is the thing that seems to be like the most annoying thing in my life right now. And she just does her thing. And I'm like, she's just doing a thing, Marina. Like, you're just getting all het up about somebody doing a dog doing its thing. She's just come to see me. And I was like, oh, wow. I'm attempting to beat my dog up about her just doing her thing. Well, that's just crazy. It's just crazy.
Yeah. And you know what I think it is, as I'm listening to you? I think it is that it's like when we feel that sort of, because bottom line is we all feel we've lost control of this illusion of the safety we thought was out there. So I think what happens is we start sort of trying to create, control rather our environment. And whether it's like, the dog's, as you say, it's probably always done its thing, but all of a sudden you're noticing its thing because it's like, maybe I can control my dog right now, or maybe I can control my partner, or it's just so funny what we do.
Yeah, those weird habits. So what of, any of us that are in relationships that are codependent, especially now, I was talking to my partner about this today. He was in a really toxic relationship for 8 years. And I was saying to him, I wonder how many men, because it's not just women, but men who also, if they are in an abusive relationship are having to stick this out. Like, what the hell are you going to do? Where are you going to go? You can't go anywhere.
Well, that's what I was saying. It's like, well, first of all, I mean, we did a show a while back on narcissism, and we highlighted all, what those traits were and what a narcissistic relationship looked like. But do you want me to just go over what a codependent, somebody suffering with codependency, what that looks like? Yes. So then people who are listening, if they can identify with some of those traits, and then we can sort of make sense of it. Sure. So basically, I am a totally recovered, thank God, codependent. But I spent many, many, many years suffering from codependent thinking, which completely and utterly, derailed or influenced my relationships, my unhealthy relationships. That was my part in it. The fact that I quite often chose narcissistic men to be in a relationship with was just because it was the perfect fit. All they cared about was their needs, and all I cared about were their needs. So it was the perfect fit. I was this sort of needless, wantless, how can I make you happy person. So anyway, so just to go back a little bit, I grew up in a very chaotic upbringing, and that set in a certain pattern of behavior that I had that set me up for having this, disordered way of thinking. So I'm just going to give you a broad outline of what codependency is and what can lead to it and what you can do to not do it anymore, basically. So basically, most codependent children grew up in a dysfunctional environment, usually traumatic in some way, maybe some physical abuse or sexual abuse or abandonment, or simply having a narcissistic parent. Because what happens is if you're a narcissistic parent, if that child is not giving you what you want or behaving in the way that you want them to behave, you'll use abandonment to control them. So you withdraw your affection, you sort of are dismissive of them. And the sheer fact that if you're suffering from a narcissistic behavior, you really don't see anybody else's needs and wants. You only see your own. So that can set up a child for feeling ignored, rejected, not good enough, all these feelings that can go into that. And also what happens is the child then has to negate their own needs to take care of the parents' needs, because that's the only way they're going to be seen and heard and loved. So they push down their needs. They start growing up to be needless and wantless. It's always about adjusting themselves to fit another person. And that habit is they take it through into adulthood. And there's a couple of things. I'm just going to refer to my notes sometimes so I can see and make sure I don't miss anything here. But so the fact that either their parents or their caregivers either abuse them or abandon them, often that child feels like, well, there must be something wrong with me. If my parent abused or abandoned me, then there's something inherently wrong with me. So they grow up with a deep sense of shame. And what happens is in adulthood, they start looking for other unhealthy people to be in a relationship with, usually more unhealthy than they are, because that way they don't feel they're so bad. I mean, it's unconscious. Nobody's doing this intentionally, but it's a way of just taking the focus off them and putting it on somebody else. The other thing that when you have grown up in a dysfunctional environment and there's a lot of chaos or fighting or push-pull of abandonment and using abandonment to control, often as an adult, you'll seek out that same type of environment because that's your norm. Even though it feels really dramatic and full of turmoil for healthy people, to us, that's just a norm. And if it's anything less than that, if there's a normal sort of peaceful interaction, it feels like we're dead. We don't feel we're alive unless we're in a heightened state of turmoil or drama, whatever it is. So a lot of codependents are, they are drama queens and attracted to dramatic, situations or relationships. And then the other thing is they tolerate abuse because they have such a huge fear of abandonment that they're afraid that if they speak up and say, this doesn't feel good to me, or please, don't be so aggressive with me, they're afraid that their partner is going to leave them. So they very subtly give the message to their partner that they will accept abuse. And unfortunately, then we teach people how to treat us. And if we let somebody abuse us, then that's the treatment we're going to keep getting back. So, and then they have very sort of weak boundaries. I mean, constantly moving that boundary to accommodate somebody else that clearly doesn't have healthy boundaries either. So both people in that relationship have weak boundaries. And then what happens is you become completely enmeshed with the other person. So whatever they're thinking or feeling, you're thinking and feeling too. There's no sort of distance between two healthy people coming together for a healthy relationship. You're constantly sort of in that emotional enmeshment where you can't even think straight because you're feeling and thinking everything your partner is feeling and thinking. And you're so disconnected from your own feelings in the end because it's all about the other person. How to keep the other person happy or how to control them. A lot of the partnerships that codependents get into are with addicts, whether it's whether you're addicted to alcohol or drugs or whatever your addiction of choice is. And sometimes the addiction can be to anger. Anger is an addiction. It's that sort of, this is how I feel better, is to express myself in a really angry way. So we already mentioned people pleasers. They're always putting other people's needs ahead of their own. They believe that unless they are making somebody else happy, that they're not going to be loved. So they need to feel needed. They need to feel that, because again, that's an insurance to them. If I'm needed, then my partner won't leave me. So you bend over backwards to accommodate them. It's this subtle thing of like, I don't want to be left or abandoned. They tend to take things very personally because they don't see themselves, they see their partner's behavior as a reflection of what they're doing. They don't understand that their partner is a completely separate human being who's having their own thoughts and feelings that have no bearing on you. But they believe that, if their partner is angry, it's because I did something wrong. What can I do to make my partner happy? And that's what keeps you in that dance. They have usually very low self-esteem, again, coming from that belief system that if I was, good enough or lovable, then my parents wouldn't have abused me or abandoned me. So again, because they lack that self-esteem within them, they're constantly looking for validation from the outside. If my partner loves me, that means I'm a good person. If I say yes to other people and they say, oh my God, you're so wonderful, you're so great, thank you so much, you're so kind, you're so generous, that becomes addictive to the codependent. They need that constant affirmation that they are a good person. So again, they it's all about making somebody else happy, not themselves. That's pretty much it. That describes that. So imagine what I've just painted there, that scenario of somebody that is constantly auto-referencing as to how good a person they are, constantly feeling responsible for everybody else's feelings, whether it's their partner, their husband, their wife, their child. It's you can see the pain and the stress that can put on anybody in normal circumstances, but you put on top of that this confinement and both the codependent's emotional reaction becomes more reactive, plus the partner they're with, who is clearly not healthy either. As I've said to you before, your water finds its equal. You'll never have a completely healthy person in a relationship with a totally unhealthy person. Whatever the dynamic is going on, you usually match each other on the level of dysfunction or suffering or pain. And again, we're in the 3P community. All of this is describing behaviors, not who the person is. Everybody has the ability to see something differently and therefore make different choices in their life. So this is just describing a scenario of thinking in the moment that and those moments can carry on for a long time if you don't see any different. So you might be in this behavior for a very long time, but there is hope. There's hope. Where was I? So I was saying, you can imagine the added stress that this situation has put on a couple that already has a fragile way of relating to each other. And you can imagine that somebody doesn't want to we always say that you're walking on eggshells because you're afraid of your partner's, big reactions. And so people are almost frozen in fear right now, afraid to say anything or stand up for themselves. So they're probably allowing more and more abuse to happen because they feel that they're trapped. They have nowhere to go. So yeah, there's a lot of this dynamic is heightened incredibly. So
as I said, I guess it's a bit like putting it under a magnifying glass and, I go on these morning walks with my dog, and one of the things that kind of keeps occurring to me is that this is like, if we were going somewhere, we've just got on Concorde.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're going there a hell of a lot faster. So everything has been sort of magnified, intensified, because even though I guess the circumstances can't give us a feeling, even though it looks to us that confinement is giving us a feeling, but it can't because it's created via this amazing principle called the thought. I guess on some level, there is a shift and change in how we are living. So, we're not doing certain things. We're not going certain places. We're not having the space that we could otherwise have.
It's true. And I always say, we always say we live in the feeling of our thinking. And, some people use the phrase, it's all an illusion. That's not a word I use, because sometimes I think it can be perceived as dismissive. For me, I the way I see it, and I think that's what I love about the principles, is we can all we can share is what we see.
Yeah.
And what I see is that we are impacted in the world of form. What we do with that whatever that circumstance is completely unique to every single person. I've used the example before, being, my mother passing away and having 7 children, well, 6 of us remaining, all having completely different reactions. Now, you could say, well, my mother died, of course I'm upset. But then I looked at all my siblings, and it's like, oh my God, there's the degree of reaction from upset to, not being upset at all, was pretty incredible. And it's the same thing with this situation we have right now. It's some people are being, we're being impacted by it, but it's what you do with that, how you interpret it. We were just discussing earlier, we've seen this whole flurry of creativity and newness coming into our world because of what's happening. I mean, you and I are experiencing and playing with really creating some really different things, which is fun and exciting. I've been getting to know my elderly neighbors, and it's the most enriching. I've been on the phone with them. I've been going grocery shopping for them, and I've just said, basically, there's about 10 of them, and we just have the most amazing chats, sometimes for about an hour. I've learned so much about them and their lives, and it's completely enriched me. I mean, I feel so much happier for this experience. It came through the coronavirus, which is not pleasant for anybody, but I also see the rewards in it.
Yeah.
But going back to the relationship for a minute, it is true. It's and that's where I want to just highlight something. It's like, it's not that you become more of a doormat, or you become afraid to speak, or accept more abuse. But what it is it's timing. It's also, is this the time to engage or inflame the situation? Are there things that you can do, self-care things that you can do to soothe yourself, that your partner doesn't have to change his behavior or her behavior, that you can actually separate and see them as an entirely different person who's going through their own feelings due to the thinking they're having that have no bearing on you? So you don't need to change your partner. You don't need to control them or even be hurt by them. Just understand that they are living in the feeling of their own thinking, and it has nothing to do with you. And what can you do in that moment where you can take care of yourself? Which is, number one, understanding that, I love that the concept of separate realities. I mean, I used to take things incredibly personally before. If somebody said something mean about me or called me a bitch, that was a control thing for me. It's like my partner would call me a bitch, and I'd end up going, I don't want to be a bitch. What can I do to make him, appreciate me and love me? And then I started twisting myself into that pretzel just to be loved. But now if somebody called me a bitch, I think, they're having some interesting thinking right now. And I just get on with what else I was doing. I wouldn't take it personally in any way, shape or form. But before, it would have completely taken me down. And so that's what I'm pointing to. It's just to really, find the space within, which is what you said earlier. We might not be able to leave our houses and go somewhere else or whatever, but maybe you can step outside. Maybe you can take a few deep breaths. If you are able to walk in your neighborhood, take a walk. But self-soothe, run yourself a bath, go and have a bath, maybe put candles, do something that's going to make you feel good for you, that you can do. Not look to your partner to make you feel a certain way.
Or call a friend.
Yeah, exactly. Call me. One of my elderly neighbors. But yeah, exactly. Call a friend. Get on Zoom. And I mean, how great is Zoom? We still get to see each other and talk to each other. And and also, I used to notice when I was in a very dysfunctional relationship that things heightened when we were in the car together. And I just think, what is it about the car? And I thought, you know what, it's a small container and the energy gets really heightened really fast. I used to like open the window. If I was having a fight, I would like open the window and hang my head out like a dog and just breathe and, you know, try and get some air. But it's the same thing in the house. It's a you know, depending on, you know, some people live in very small homes and other ones have bigger homes. But as you said, it is finding that space within. It really is, and that's the only thing that will really help you through this period. And you know, we don't give tips and tools and things like that, but I've noticed that by being of service to others, as in not just my clients, but with my neighbors, it really is the best medicine. And codependents, and you know, have a tendency to always want to be of service. So it's not going above and beyond where it starts costing you. But as you said, just reach out to a friend or somebody else that might be struggling. Just human connection is so important right now. Healthy human connection.
Yeah. So one of the things that's always coming to mind as you were talking was this Viktor Frankl's beautiful quote where he says, between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space, our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. And it's so succinct, especially when you think about what he had to go through. He was a prisoner of war in Auschwitz, and his experience of it was quite extraordinary. And today I saw something really beautiful that Elizabeth Gilbert shared. She was sharing a story of a friend that went to a prison, and her friend was dying of cancer at the time. You know, she'd been on drugs and so forth and so on, and had been in prison and so forth on Rikers Island, and had gone back to open up the library there. And she was talking to some of the prisoners, and basically, it was just so beautiful. She said, is you don't live in this prison. You live up here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you need to nourish this. This is who you are. This is where you live. This is who you are. This is where you live. And it was so graphic and so simple and so succinct. So those of you that can't see me is literally, this is who you are, tapping on the heart. This is where you live in your head. They don't live in the prison, they live in their minds. And this sort of sense of we have a choice to walk away from a big reaction and say, not now. I'm not going to have this conversation right now. I'm just going to walk away, and we'll have it when you're feeling calm. That was something I didn't even know I personally had as an option. I didn't even know that existed. I didn't even consider that was even an option. And so I've got to see this, and I practice a lot with Leo. Like, not having this conversation now, I'm going to walk away. We're going to come back when we're a little bit more calm, because you can't hear me. I can't hear you.
Yeah.
Ain't happening. And it's amazing. There is so much practice to be had on our kids, because they're much more receptive, right? I'm like practicing.
I'm listening to you, and I'm just thinking, wow, how lucky is Leo to have that model to him? Because, I mean, think back to our parents. I remember, I think part of our, we all have levels of codependency. I remember my mum, who was terribly stressed, raising 7 children, no father, and opening up her home to, all these mentally ill people. So if I had a need or a want, if I needed anything, I mean, innocently, she totally was like negligent of everything. I mean, in our upbringing. But if I needed anything, it would be like, you're driving me crazy. I can't bear this. And she would go nuts. So it was like, shut down. Can't, I'm making her go nuts. I must be responsible for her feelings. So it was, and that was just one of the areas. But to sort of show our children that, no, you didn't drive me nuts. I wound myself up. I'm going to give myself a timeout, and you're wound up too, and you need a timeout, and we're going to come back together and talk about this. And I think, God, that's so wonderful to see that he will know that. And it's so interesting. Sorry, you say, and I'll go back to what.
There's so much creativity in it, because the other thing that he has learned to do, he calls me crazy lady. And so now we joke about it, because it's like, oh, I became, is crazy lady here? He goes, yeah, crazy lady's here, mummy. And he's like, I don't like it when you go crazy lady. And I said, no, I don't like it either. But there is this joke we now have where it's like, a crazy lady's arrived.
Yeah, oh, I love that.
Chill, crazy lady, just chill, crazy lady.
But it's exactly, and that's what's so funny. It's like using humor and laughing at ourselves. And that's the other thing, is just accepting our humanity. And we all get crazy every now and again. We just do. And if you don't, then I don't understand that, because I certainly do. But it's just being okay with it. That is, we are spiritual beings having a human experience. And we have loving lady, crazy lady, grumpy lady, greedy lady, whatever, wino lady, depending on,
lady, yeah.
So it's just having fun with it. And whether you're having fun with it with your child or having fun with it within yourself, it's that taking it all so much more lightly.
Yeah, and I think, while, looking after ourselves, we can laugh at ourselves. There is room for that. There really is room for that. And so there's also room for us, because I really recognize what you're sharing. And I also recognize that I still have, I call them aeroplane trails. I can still resonate with some of what you're sharing, and I still have it. That there are moments where I go into that place again, that old thinking or that old pattern. But now I'm beginning to recognize that it's not me. It's just that I have this weird thinking, gunky thinking, or just this thinking, old thinking that's still there. And
yeah, it's just a habit. That's all it is. It's just a thought that's had its way with you basically for so many years that it thinks it can keep coming back. But now we know differently. We know that we're not our thinking. It's not an indictment of who we are. We can take it so much more lightly. It's like, oh, you're visiting again.
Right. Exactly. And there's room for us not to beat ourselves up about it, because I think there's an element of this which I've been through, which is, oh, I've done it again. And then beat myself up about the fact that I've gone back into that habit of thinking, I thought I was over this now and I should know better. And there's shame that comes with that. And then there's this whole sort of cycle of shame that comes with the fact that now you've repeated that same, I said I wouldn't, and I promised myself that I wouldn't, and now I'm doing it again. And I'm such a bad person because of that. Versus going, oh, oops.
I have that Britney Spears song in my head, like, oops, I did it again. It was a whoops. It's not the end of the world.
Oopsie.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not, again, and it's also the knowing that it will still happen. We're not trying to reach for perfection here. Just a simple knowing of observing that, oh, I got caught up in my thinking again. That's it. You don't have to do anything about it, and certainly don't judge it and judge yourself, because then you're going to just make it be more solid and stick around more. It's just the lovingly acceptance of it's been there for a long time. It's made a little groove. It's going to sort of come in, but I just don't have to believe it anymore. And yeah, I mean, I don't want to pretend I don't still fall into that way of thinking. I'm much better in my personal relationships, much clearer there, much healthier boundaries. But I can be codependent with my children. I can be like, you come first. It's like, I just am. And with some friends too. I have a friend that behaves in quite a narcissistic way. And I laughingly say, well, at least I'm not married to her, or at least I'm not dating her. But I do have, because people that have narcissistic tendencies are incredibly charismatic. They're very charming, and they are very attractive. And so, I do tend to sort of enjoy them. So I go there again, put my toe in and realize it's scalding water and pull it back out again. But I don't beat myself up for it. I make a joke of it. Like I said, well, at least I'm not marrying them or living with them or whatever anymore. They're just a friend. And, when it's too much, I can get some distance again. And, but it's, anything I've described is, there's no shame in any of that behavior. It's just, it was a coping mechanism that you, as an innocent little child, you came up with to help you navigate the world. And again, it's not to make your parents or your caregivers bad either. Yeah, they probably learned these coping mechanisms from their childhood. So everybody's innocently doing the best they can. And it's so important to remember that. I mean, you shared that you were able to end an unhealthy relationship, but you didn't do it with anger and being punitive. You detached with love and compassion, but you knew that you didn't want to be in that type of environment anymore. No. And you advocated for yourself, and you just said, but you didn't have to vilify him and make him a bad person. It was just like, this is not working for me. I deserve better. And that's all we can do. And again.
Yeah. And I also saw that he is where he's at.
Yeah.
And that I'm at where I'm at. And that was no longer working.
Just not a good fit. You don't need to make anybody bad or wrong. It's just not a good fit anymore.
Yeah, like a pair of old trousers. Just I lost weight. Lots of baggage. Yeah, lots of baggage on the way.
Yeah, but the other thing I also want to say, and I say this to my clients too, is because sometimes it is a form of addiction when you're that enmeshed with another human being. And just like all addictions, sometimes it's hard, you create some separation, then you find yourself back there. And that can create part of the shame cycle as well, is like, why did I come back? And I say, don't ever be ashamed of taking another look at a relationship. That's a beautiful quality, to go back and go, can I make this work? And at some point, when you're ready, you will say, I've given it enough tries, I want to walk away. But don't beat yourself up for having another look. So that's, I think, very important, because again, that shame cycle can, you start feeding it, judging yourself. Like you said, how could I let this happen? And you let it happen because you did the best you could with the thinking you had in that moment. And that was it. And you learned from it. So it's not like it was a totally negative thing. You learn a lot about yourself from it, a lot about life, how you show up in life. And that will trickle down to all your relationships. Like you said, not just with your partner, but with your children, with your friends, with your clients. I have to watch, again, it's codependency with clients. It's easy for me to fall into that role again of giving more than is healthy. Sometimes I have, much, much better now, but there's been times in the past where my boundaries, I let the client sort of, it was totally me. I didn't hold the healthy boundary of, our time is, certain things like that. But and again, we're talking about relationships right now, but it happens as, if you're boss and you're the employee, it happens in every single relationship we have with our parents. If our parents are still alive, what is the dynamic that we're still, coming from with our parents? Are we holding healthy boundaries with them? So it's fascinating. I love it. I love seeing people find freedom and still be beautiful, amazing, caring human beings. A lot of parents are afraid they're going to become selfish and mean when they stop, taking care of others. But there's a healthy taking care of, is what I'm pointing to.
It was so funny. I was talking to a client today, an ex-client, and I was saying to her, you know, how's your relationship with her husband? And she's like, you know what? Just now, like when I need some space, I've got my own room in the bed in the house now, and he doesn't even need to. I don't even need to tell him that I'm fed up with him. I'll just go into the room and close the door.
Exactly. We all need our spaces, as you say. If it's not the luxury of an additional bedroom, it's the luxury of going inside and just communing with yourself.
But she used to be really attached to how he was and what he was up to and what he was doing. And it's so beautiful to see that she's just gone, nah, you're doing your thing and I'm just not really interested in that now. So I'm going to just, you know, go and look after myself. And I just thought that it just makes a lot of sense to her. And she said it with so much lightness that I was like, that's really cool that she saw that. So Del, if somebody's listening in and going, I think I'm in a codependent relationship, but I'm not quite sure, or I know that my relationship right now isn't really working and I'd love to get more understanding of my part in it, because of course that's the only thing we can really have control over. How can they reach you and connect with you?
I'm at adeyjones.com is my website, and on that it has my contact info, email, telephone number there to call. And just I have that Insightful Conversations podcast YouTube channel show. So if you want to learn more about the principles in general and get to meet some of the fabulous, amazing 3P community that we're a part of, Marina has been on the show twice. Oh. I this is something I've shared before. I am so passionate about. It was my Achilles heel that really brought me a lot of suffering in my life until I had 30 years of regular therapy to try and get over this. And it was only when I came across the understanding of the principles that I found complete freedom from this habitual thought pattern that I was engaged in. So.
And I can really vouch for Del. It was actually through a conversation that we had. We had various conversations, but one in particular that really impacted me and that was actually a catalyst for me to finish the relationship. So, get into a conversation with her because it's really worth it. She knows what she's talking about, but she also knows where to take it so that you actually have the insights you need in order for you to make the right decisions for you. So thank you.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much. It's love being in conversation with you, whatever the subject.
Whatever the subject. Yeah. So for those of you that have been on today, I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Until the next time, bye-bye for now.
And there we have it, another beautiful episode of The Joy of Being. Now, if you got something from this and you know somebody that could really, really do with a boost of positivity and joy, then please do share the episode with them. It's amazing the ripple effect that these episodes can have on others. Failing that, if you'd like to join a different conversation around what's going on in these uncertain times, then please do join the Facebook group, The Breathing Space for Hardworking Mamas. You can find us at facebook.com/groups/The Breathing Space for Mums in Business.